Hello, and welcome back to the podcast where you are invited for lighthearted conversations about things that matter as you seek to live your most meaningful, beautiful, and joyful life. I'm your host, Dr. Edie Wadsworth, and I hope you enjoy your stay here at the House of Joy. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to House of Joy. You are in for a treat. I almost wish you could have been a fly on the wall when Tim and I were just chatting like friends, but I'm so happy to have you here, Tim Willard. You are one of my favorite writers, thinkers. I've had you at my live event. I love your family. I'm so honored to have you here. Welcome to the House of Joy podcast.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here. And I think the conversation before this is actually going to be, or is longer than what we're going to do right now. But
I think
and
so
that
too.
was, and I love that. It was so good to reconnect and talk. So
I know we got
happy
to
to be
catch
here.
up.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just told you this, but when you told me that you have a devotional on Advent, say no more. Get on my podcast and tell us all about it. I got to read a section of it this morning. It's so beautiful. I discovered the beauty of Advent, I want to say in 2009 or 10, we started, because I had gone to churches when I was young that didn't celebrate Advent. And when we started attending a Lutheran church, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. These readings are so beautiful and the tradition of it. And then we started observing it in our home and doing devotional in our home. And it really is one of my favorite seasons of the year. So I'm so happy that you're doing a study on this. But before we get into that, tell me why you love Advent. How did you come to love this church season of the year? And for those who may not know what it is, just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah. So what may surprise you is I have never been an Advent guy. So I grew up in a Grace
Oh,
Brethren church. Yeah. So I'll tell you the story. When
okay.
I grew up in a Grace Brethren church, and now Pastor Young, when we would have the Christmas time, we would light the Advent candle. So I didn't really know that I grew up in a church that we did that, and so he would talk about the theme of each week. They would light the candle and they would read. So I was kind of embedded in it without it being some kind of like ritual for me, but
Okay.
forever and a day, the beauty of the season I have done some of my best writing during this time of kind of like wintering. I work on fiction. It has become almost like a cascading, beautiful time for me to almost kind of like go inward a little bit and
Yep.
reevaluate myself, but then also looking towards obviously the hope of the season. And so I'm coming at it from a different place. I'll tell you this. I was talking to my friend Ann last year, and
Yes.
I'm like, hey, I was thinking about doing something for Advent. And so she goes, you know what I would love to see you do? And I go, no, what? She goes, I would like to hear about how to chase beauty during Advent. So that is the seed of the conversation. That's how
Mm.
it was birthed last Christmas. And so I am
Oh,
his, so
are
it
we
was,
talking about our mutual friend Ann Voskamp?
yes, yes,
Oh, what a
yes.
great
Yeah,
story.
so she was the one behind it. She probably doesn't even know that, but like I was toying with this idea last year. And I even created the website because I'm visual. I like to create stuff and like write it down, but I shelved it. And because I love wintering this time of year. I love to
I
go,
love wintering too.
and I would love to hear how you define wintering because it's such a great time for looking forward and for looking inward and even for then doing stuff maybe that you put on the shelf, like maybe in the more busy season. So I've never been like a ritualistic Advent guy.
Okay.
This year, what I want to do is kind of do what Anne challenged me to do, even for myself. So this is like preaching to me. Like,
Yep.
how, Tim, can you chase beauty in Advent for me? What does that mean for me? Because that's really what I'm doing when I'm involved in Advent and the Christmas time. I think it's such a big, encompassing, beautiful idea. I just wanted to express it and let people kind of go along with that journey. So is that a little surprising for you?
Amazing. No, I love that. When I first discovered it, I was actually homeschooling my girls. And
Okay.
so we were listening to something on like the word Advent that comes from the Latin word that means coming or to
Mhm.
come. And then our pastor at the time did a preached a message on the comings of Christ, his first
Yes.
coming in the manger,
Mm.
him coming to us, his second coming, him coming to us
Mhm.
weekly in communion and
Oh,
in
I
the
like that.
word. Yeah,
Yes.
like the comings of Christ. And I
Okay.
was like, oh, that's so cool and so
Yeah.
rich. And so every year I feel like it's one of those things that I just so look forward to. I love, if you live where we live in North America, it's dark, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of darkness. It gets dark early. And
Mhm.
so all the lighting of the candles, I have tons of little, battery operated candles in my
Yeah.
house. I've already
Same.
put lots of twinkle lights up, but I love that light coming in the
Mhm.
dark. And yeah, it's just become literally one of my favorite seasons. I love everything about it. My husband is like trying to talk me someday into, wintering in Florida. I'm like, absolutely not.
No, no, no,
We got
no.
to be here where it's cold and dark, and we've got our
Yes.
twinkle lights, and we've got our. I love in your study you were talking about going for brisk walks. That's one of my favorite things to do this time of year is
Yes.
wrap up, go for a walk.
Yes.
And yeah, so I'm really excited about, for my people to hear about this because I think it can be a great way to really enjoy, savor, slow down the season, anticipate the
Mhm.
coming of God to us in so many ways.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I have just a few questions because
Sure.
I don't know if some of my people are very familiar with you, but I met you many years ago. But what before I met you, I basically became a C.S. Lewis super fan. And when I was homeschooling my girls, I think I have all his books
Mhm.
and I've read most of them many times. He changed my life. I love him. I tell my
Oh,
husband, he introduced me to Martin Luther. I became Lutheran. I introduced him to C.S. Lewis. He became a big Lewis fan. One of our favorite things to do is actually on road trips to listen to Lewis books
yes.
audio. It's
Yes.
the best.
It is the best. Oh
And
my
you're like a
word.
C.S. Lewis scholar. So that to me, like when I started reading this study, I'm like, oh, I love Tim's writing so much. Your book, Beauty Chasers, like everything you write, I feel like has this, I don't know, it reminds me of C.S. Lewis. It brings me back to that time when, I
Yeah.
was really learning a lot about, or relearning a lot about faith.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for you,
Mhm.
how does your scholarship of Lewis inform what you do? I notice almost, I think in everything I've read of yours, there's always a quote of Lewis or a nod to Lewis.
Mhm.
So how does Lewis play into this for you, if at all? I think he does, though.
Yeah, so I think I might have told you this a few years ago. When I went and did the PhD on Lewis, I wasn't a Lewis fan, meaning I had read him, but I wasn't fanboy. And what got me reading more of him was The Weight of Glory, and I was researching beauty for another project I was doing. And the more I got into it, then the PhD kind of happened. We moved to Oxford, all that stuff. So, but once you are kind of drowning in I'm in the Lewisian Sea, right? It's just every day. But then you also start seeing like where he got things. Like I love reading. So if you read Augustine, you will find a lot of echoes of Lewis. There's nothing new under the sun. Lewis was just so good at taking those things like the restlessness of the heart or the beauties that we see here that are pointing to something else. There's some Aquinas, there's Augustine in there. When you see that kind of stuff, it then you kind of look at it and go, okay, how can I now look at these old ideas and make them mine? So I'm probably in it so much I don't even know that I'm doing it.
Okay.
And do you know what I mean? Like
Yes, I definitely am.
I've
Yes.
been bathed in it, and like I even think even like, and I know you love The Great Divorce. But like think in those images from the Great Divorce, or like we listen to Paralandra and the whole Cosmic Trilogy on audiobook while we travel. And when I'm thinking about stuff of our culture, my mind when we have cultural things going on, or I'm writing on cultural things, I automatically am in the mode of that hideous strength and the abolition of man and screw tape letters.
Yep.
Because prophetically, Lewis years and years ago was talking about
Saw
those
this
things.
coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in those. So for Advent, the idea, one of the great ideas is this idea of homeliness. that his friend Arthur Greaves talked to him about. Lewis was more on this like metaphysical realm, talking about beauty and very platonic. But Arthur Greaves introduced him to this idea of that Lewis called homeliness. Look, finding the beauty in the small things, like a well-ordered table or garden, right? Or even like a great novel, or even the feeling of certain kind of music, how it makes you feel. So those kinds of things, the homeliness, this is the season of homeliness, right? I mean, you just got done
Mm,
talking about your home. You talk about Advent, the first thing you started talking about was your home, your twinkly
yeah.
lights, right? Your
Yes.
candles, all those things. And if everybody's honest, even men, that is that is what we associate with the season, the beauty, the homeliness of the season, and the nostalgia of it for me is really deep, and it even connects to your earlier question about Advent and me. My mind goes back to seasons of winter from the beginning of my faith, finding Christ for the first time, and also great memories of those Advent candles and being in church with my friends and family. So like
Mm,
that's part of it.
yeah. I love one of the things that I read in your study, which Lutherans talk about all the time, is how God hides himself in
Mm,
ordinary things.
yeah.
Just that
Oh,
statement makes me teary eyed.
yeah.
And the way
Mm,
Lutherans would look at it is he hides himself in water in
mhm,
baptism, he hides himself in the word, he hides
mhm.
himself in the supper. And I think, that it kind of speaks to that homeliness. He also hides himself in us,
Yeah.
in each other. It reminds me of, I wrote a blog post years ago about how, you know, I was coming downstairs to make waffles and wrestling with this idea of, I just want to really know God. I want to meet God. And then
Yeah.
I listened to a podcast that was talking about, no, he's right there in the kid that's asking you for
Mm,
waffles. There he is.
yeah.
And I think finding him in all of those ordinary things in ordinary places, I just can't think of a better time of year when we can sort of slow down and look for that, look for all the places that he hides himself.
Mm. There's a book called The ABCs of Grace. Have you ever heard of that book? By
Uh-uh.
Friedrich Buechner. That was one of the early books when you talk about God hiding himself and things. That is a man, a writer
I
going
love his writing though.
to Friedrich Buechner.
Yeah.
When you read that book, it was one of the eye-opening books for me of seeing God in all those small things. So, and I think about when I think about these things, I think about God as an artist, and I love that because as an artist, I try to put myself, embody Tim in what I'm doing. So people, when they look at something I paint, will go, "Oh, that's Tim." Like I had a friend who said, "Tim, I see you in that." And I think
Mm,
that's what God does, right? With all the fullness and the beauty and the might of life that He pours into what we see. And you and I, before we got on, we're talking about how we both love taking winter walks. I just love this time of year, being under the stars, walking in the cold. I feel like that's one of the biggest ways I encounter God in those kinds of things where He hides Himself in the constellations. I'm writing
yeah.
on constellations right now, and I'm like, do people see this? Like, have we
I know.
stopped looking at
Have
like
we
the,
seen the night sky?
I know, right? Just like it just never ceases to astound me. Even though I
Yeah.
go out every night and I bought these huge binoculars, I should show you. They're like this big to be able to see the stars better. But that kind of stuff, I feel like where God's like, hey, here I am.
Yeah.
Here I am. And it's about awareness, like, right? This time of year, and we were talking about this too earlier, just how frantic it is and chaotic. And
Yeah.
and I feel like the purposefulness of it is being aware. Like you can be
Mm,
carried away by the wave and the flood of the season, and you're like, man, it went, and I didn't find anything, to hold on to. But if we enter it aware, and I think Advent does a great job of this, like helping us be attentive to like those little things where God hides himself, then
yeah.
I think it really comes alive.
Yes. And Advent, and you mentioned this in your study, is not something that the scriptures, it's not in the scriptures, but it's a rhythm that
Mhm.
the church gave herself, you say, so that she wouldn't lose the story. Oh, I love how you said that. So, how does beauty help us recover the story of God in this kind of loud, chaotic, you talk about this too, divided world where I feel like, if you get on social media,
Mhm.
it's always trying to divide us. It's kind of doom and gloom. How can this time and the beauty of it help us recover the story?
Yeah, I think beauty arrests you, right? When you're caught in that gasp, is what I like to call it, the aesthetic gasp of something that's just awesome, or it can be sublime or big or wonderful. But I think beauty actually it comes to us and it kind of awakens us a little bit, right? And so
Yep.
we become aware of it, and then you become aware of God. When you become aware of God and you're living aware of God, then you can remember where things should be. And again, we're referencing our earlier conversation, but we're like, where should we be in this day and age where everything is divided and chaotic? Why can't we be not in those modes or those veins, like where everybody is yelling and stressed out, and this anxiety that kind of underlays our world? Why can't we
Yep.
live over here where
Hmm.
we are? And I love House of Joy, just the idea of House of Joy, where we are trying to build houses of joy, and
Yes.
joy connects to beauty, right? And one of the my favorite definitions for beauty is the splendor of being.
Mm.
And that's an Aquinas, a nod to Aquinas and this French philosopher I love. But the splendor of being. So when I see you, Edie, being Edie, right? When I see you like in your moment of living how I know God has created you to be, and you're in that fullness, and you're bright and you're happy and you're operating in your joy. That's the splendor of being, because you're showing what you're made to do, just like a tree does. A tree
Yes.
grows and the maple does what the maple is supposed to do. Just like my dog Cash, he hops like a bunny when I'm going to go throw him something, because he's a happy dog. He's operating in what he's supposed to be, this fun dog. And
Yep.
when we are operating in the way that we're supposed to be, we're living in the splendor of existence of how God made us. And that's how God settles us down and goes, okay, let's remember the story here. The story
Yeah,
is
and
this.
don't you think too, like when I think of that, it's actually a lot of what I teach my own clients is how to really live as your true self, to live
Oh,
in
yeah.
the way, that God designed you. And it's
Mhm.
mostly releasing things
Mm,
that are keeping you from doing that, releasing
mm.
stories that are keeping you from doing that, releasing ways of being, that sort of overwhelmed, stressed out way
Yes.
of being that kind of crowds out the joy, the hope that we have, in Christ. And yeah, so I think for me, it feels mostly like a releasing
Mm,
of things that keep us from living in that. I just love your writing in general. It's so poetic, so beautiful. What do you see this study as? Do you see it more as a devotional, like a spiritual practice? Because when I was reading it, I was thinking like I almost wanted you like reading it to me in my ear. But how can you imagine that people could use it this time of year to kind of do what we're saying?
yeah. So you will be able to listen to me say it in your
Stop.
ear. So
I
I
did not know
will.
that.
Well, it's not going to be every single one of them, because there's going to be 22 reflections sent to your email, and then
Okay.
I'm compiling them in this nice little PDF. But several of them I'll be reading it or giving like an audio reflection or meditation.
Okay.
So you will have that. Um, what did I think it is? I've written a devotional before, and I don't think it's a devotional necessarily. I feel like it's more an invitation to live in a certain way, an invitation to be in a certain posture during Advent that is inviting others to step into it, but then for you to live in this awareness. So you could probably view it as a devotional because it's going to come every day,
Okay.
except for Saturdays.
Okay.
But it's something that I feel like it's more invitational to you, and this it'll give you. I'm going to give you a couple ideas for practices or to see beauty, like some small beauty of the day. But I want it to be something that's going to almost be watering people with prayer, with reflection, so that you can actually take a breath, even though we're in this season where it seems so frantic, and that you can almost change the way that you are, like your physical, even your physical body. I know you talk a lot about this kind of stuff, and I believe it's so important. We can be so frantic that we're stressed, our shoulders are clenched up, or we haven't gone for a walk, or we're sitting all the time and we're just inward, nodding up inside. So I want it to be
Yep.
this invitation for you to breathe again. So not
Mm.
necessarily a devotional, might feel like that because I have written like that. So probably a little bit of both, an amalgam of all of it. If
Of
that
all
makes
of
sense.
it.
Yeah.
I love it. And you talk about hope. Of course, the Sundays in Advent, like have a certain theme. I know our church does like different colors for the different
Yeah.
Sundays. And it's so fun to go to church during Advent and see, the first candle gets lit, and then the next Sunday, the
Mhm.
next candle gets lit. And one of the Sundays, it's at the first, I think it's the first Sunday, is about hope. So you emphasize that hope is not sentiment, that it's a
Mhm.
structure. Can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
Yeah. I really love talking about this, by the way. And so, Lord willing, my next book is going to be on light and hope. Um,
Mm,
I
wow.
feel I feel like hope is not talked about. At the end of First Corinthians, Paul goes, all these remain: faith, hope, and love. The greatest is
Yep.
love. Well, the greatest of love is because God is love. But what are faith and hope? So hope, when you research hope a little bit in the Christian framework, hope is it structures your reality. It is a almost a, and you talk about mindset all the time. It is a
Yep.
mindset, right? And
Yes.
our faith in God is the horizon, right? And so we are working towards, they call it, the eschaton, the final days.
Yep.
We're hoping and we're moving through life into that horizon towards what will be the culmination of our hope. So hope isn't just optimism. It's not like I'm going, I'm going to be optimistic today. That stuff, just like happiness, we talk about joy and happiness, the difference between that. Well, that's
Yes.
the same way with hope. We can be like, hope can be the sentimental thing where it's like, I'm going to be optimistic and da da da. Well, that can go away. But what if your day is a structure of hope, of a looking toward what is to come? That's different. That is what my wife and I, when we first got married, we would talk about how our lives should be daily lived in anticipation. And I love that. Imagine if you lived every day anticipating what is coming. My dad,
Yes.
my dad's 83 in November this month, a couple days, and he always said he's like, the God is going to come back before I die. And you know what? My dad has lived his life like that. Like he lives in the hope of glory, right? Again, a
Yes.
little nod to C.S. Lewis.
Little Lewis there.
Little Lewis, the hope. So what imagine if we lived in that, right? And this first Advent Sunday, it is about hope, but it's not just like, oh, I hope things are okay, and it's this sentimental thing. Doesn't that feel weird? But what if like your
Yes.
hope was structured your days? What if it was like, okay, just like light, and people don't realize, I didn't even realize this, light structures your day, right? It
Yes.
it draws you into it, even in the darkness. We were talking about this, how when it's dark, you go towards the light. It gives reality its structure. You can see with it. The same happens with hope. When you have
Mm,
hope in your life, you're seeing out here. You're not looking at all the things that can, like you said, the stories that can bring you down, or you're not holding those things. You're not looking down at those. You're looking at the horizon of faith. And you're moving as a Christian, you're moving towards that end time. So that's how it is structural. It's not sentiment. Does that make sense?
I love that. I've never heard that before.
Okay,
So
cool.
cool. Um, I think we are living in a time though where at least I notice with the women that I coach that it's like we know that with our
Mhm.
mind, but that's not the way we're experiencing our lives. We're not experiencing them in the hope and joy that we actually have been given. And I
Mhm.
think in a time like that, when so many people are experiencing life in a different way or feeling numb or overwhelmed or kind of dull, for
Yeah.
lack of a better word, what do you think a study like this can help them rediscover?
It's a good question. Um, I would say something like this is going to help them rediscover. Maybe this might sound funny because I'm just thinking about it now, but well, I was just talking about hope as structure, but it might help them rediscover or discover direction. And when I talk about hope as structure, and then you look at the other, I said there was faith and hope, but I didn't mention love. Love is the formation of your day, right? So in the
Mm.
in the Christian way, love is kenosis. It's that's what Paul used to describe what Christ did when he came. When he came in Advent, as in the incarnation, he gave up himself, right? poured himself and came as a lowly child, right? And then was lifted up through humanity and was crucified for our sins. So love is this self-giving that we do every day. So it's the formation of how I treat you when we're doing this. Hey, Edie, how can I help you? How can I serve you? How can I love you better today? Same with your spouses, your other friends, your coworkers, right? So I feel like when we are aware and attentive to what God has for us in our lives, especially during this time of year of reflection, then we live our days in the structure of hope with the formation of love. And that gives direction to us. Like
Mm.
I was telling
Mhm.
you about how I have my volleyball girls when I'm coaching volleyball, I talk about purposeful practice. Hey, what are you doing when you step back and you're serving a ball? You need to serve in this direction, right? Well, it's the same
Yes.
when you wake up in the morning, right? If my awareness to Chris is bad, or if I'm just looking at myself, then I'm not going to have a great day with Chris if I'm just being self-absorbed. But if
Yep.
my directional intent is toward her in love, right? And also
Yes.
if I'm walking through life in hope, in daily hope, not like sentimental stuff, but like, hey, this is where we're going. And I'm
Yes.
excited about it. I'm looking forward to doing it. And in order to get there, I need to give of myself to do it. That's, I think, what I'm kind of getting at here, and how, and beauty is like the lure of it. Lure. Am I saying that well? But it
Yeah.
lures us on into hope. So,
Oh, I love that so much. I love how you talk about too about Advent kind of being a returning. I love the theme. I write about it a lot, like the theme of homecoming or returning. I think a lot of times even living as our true selves is just a returning
mm,
to, that right relationship that God has given us to himself, that design that he's given for
yeah.
us. And when you talk about Advent being a returning, I think you say this line of remembering that love entered the night.
Mm.
How are you so poetic? It's so beautiful. So tell me more about that, the returning aspect.
The returning aspect of Advent.
Yeah, like that Advent can be a returning.
Well, so if you're looking at the season as a time we said of wintering, right?
Yeah.
And for me, and I said this earlier, for me, when I think of Advent, I'm thinking of Dr. Young, right? There's going to be a piece in the PDF that won't be one of the dailies because it's an essay, but it's called The Sound and the Fury. And
Mm,
it is, I'll probably cry talking about it, but I wrote it a long time ago. But it's about me listening to Chris's family downstairs, um, like
mm,
literally the day, I think Christmas Eve. And it's in Johnstown, so the moon is out and it's cold. I opened the window and I sat at the window and just cried, listening to what was happening because I was in that moment aware just of family, the importance of
mm.
family, the laughter, what laughter can do, like hearing the loud laugh, that people can do.
Yes.
Chris is a loud laugher.
Yep.
You hear those things, and I've always had people tell me like, don't, always be paying attention to your children because the moments are gone. And I feel like if I've done one thing well, I've been in the moment with my kids, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like the returning aspect of it, nostalgia is a big deal. Like a nostalgia we can kind of I think minimize, but like there's a nostalgia to the season that is
Yes.
powerful, right? It's
Yes.
powerful. Like I talk about in one of the posts about how I found God. Now this is after Christmas, but it was in the winter, in snow under the stars, asking a very hard question of God. And I returned to that, right? For me, it's a
Mm,
nostalgia. It's the power of returning and remembering. And then I'm
yes.
also returning and remembering of what Christ did for me, but what he's done for everybody. And then remembering like, hey, that is for everybody, and that there is literal hope for everybody. So
Mm,
there's a power in like returning back to those homeward times, those home moments. You're all about home, house of joy, right? You're
yep.
There's a power in that I think this time of year, it's one thing to just sit around on the couch by a fire, but it's another thing to purposefully think about, hey, remember when like one of the we love talking about when Uncle Jeff like put this big pillow in his these big pants and like walked out. It was hysterical. There's like a ton of cousins and we're dying laughing. We laugh
Yeah.
about that every year. One year, all the guys bought axes for hatchets for with the same three. It's a hysterical thing. And it's like, oh, Tim, that's just a funny moment. No, no, no. It's a powerful moment because it
Yes.
takes you back to a real time of joy with people that you love. And there's power in that that our culture wants us to just look past. Go buy
I
this,
love
go
that.
buy that. No, you know what? Be with your people.
Yeah.
And there's power in that.
I love that. I actually can't wait to get the rest of it. So we will put all of the links where people can go grab this Advent devotional guide study. I'm
Yeah.
so grateful
Mhm.
that you wrote it. I'm so grateful that you're sharing it with us and
Mhm.
letting us support you as a writer. I'm so grateful for your voice in the world. I'm thankful for all the things you've written. I love your book, Beauty Chasers.
Mhm.
So, everyone, right after you go get Tim's Advent study, go get his book, Beauty Chasers, on Amazon. It's so amazing. But we'll put all the links below so that our people can really enjoy and remember and hope
Mhm. Yes.
and do this returning that you're talking
Mhm.
about during this amazing and beautiful Advent season. So thank you so much, Tim. We're so grateful for
Thank
you. I'm
you.
so thankful we could catch up today.
I am
Thank
too. Thank you so much for having me on. It was so fun to talk to you. It always is.
Yes.